In the sun-scorched plains of West Texas, where the horizon stretched like an endless promise and the wind whispered secrets through the mesquite bushes, the year was 1875. The land was raw, unforgiving, a place where men forged their fates with calloused hands and six-shooters at their hips. Dust devils danced across the arid earth, and the distant lowing of cattle echoed like a mournful symphony. This was the heart of cattle country, where fortunes were made on the backs of longhorns and lost in the blink of an eye to drought, rustlers, or a bad hand at poker. Jack Harlan rode into the town of Red Rock on a weary bay horse named Rusty, his spurs jingling faintly with each step. Jack was a tall man, broad-shouldered from years of wrangling steers and breaking broncos, his face weathered by the relentless sun into a map of lines that told stories he rarely shared. His Stetson hat, battered and dust-caked, shaded eyes as blue as the rare Texas sky after a rain. He had come from the Panhandle, drifting south after a failed stint as a trail boss on the Kishome Trail. Word had it that Red Rock was booming with the cattle drives heading to the railheads in Kansas, and Jack needed work, badly. His pockets were lighter than his conscience, and the ghosts of past mistakes trailed him like shadows at dusk. The town itself was a cluster of weathered wooden buildings huddled against the vastness. A general store with faded signs advertising flour and ammunition, a blacksmith's forge belching smoke, and at the center, the Double Eagle Saloon, its swinging doors beckoning like the jaws of temptation. Horses were tied to hitching posts along the main street, their tails swishing lazily at flies. As Jack dismounted, tying Rusty to a post outside the saloon, he could hear the tinny piano music spilling out, mingled with laughter and the clink of glasses. It was midday, but in a place like Red Rock, the day started and ended with whiskey. Pushing through the doors, Jack stepped into the dim interior, the air thick with the scent of tobacco, sweat, and cheap perfume. The saloon was alive with patrons, cowboys fresh off the range, gamblers hunched over cards, and a few drifters like himself nursing their sorrows. Behind the bar, a burly man with a handlebar mustache poured drinks with practiced efficiency. Jack slid onto a stool, his boots scraping the sawdust floor. "Whiskey," he grunted, tossing a coin onto the scarred wooden bar. The bartender eyed him curiously. "New in town, stranger." Jack nodded, taking the glass and downing it in one gulp. The burn steadied him. "Name's Jack Harlan, lookin' for work on a ranch. Heard the Bar X is herein." The bartender chuckled. "Bar X, that's Eli Thorne's spread, biggest outfit round here. But watch yourself, Thorne's got more enemies than a coyote in a henhouse. Rustler's been hittin' his herds hard lately." Before Jack could respond, a voice cut through the din, a woman's voice, clear and commanding. "Another round for table 3, Hank." Jack turned, and there she was, Clara Beaumont, the saloon's proprietress. She moved with the grace of a wild mustang, her dark hair pinned up in a loose bun, strands escaping to frame a face that could stop a stampede. Her dress was simple cotton, cinched at the waist, but it did little to hide the fire in her green eyes. Clara wasn't just any saloon girl. She owned the place, inherited from her late father, a gambler who'd won it in a high-stakes poker game. In a man's world, she held her own, serving drinks with one hand and a derringer in her pocket with the other. Their eyes met for a brief moment as she passed, and Jack felt a spark, something unfamiliar in his wandering life. But he pushed it aside. Romance was a luxury for settled men, not drifters like him. He finished his drink and headed out, mounting Rusty and riding toward the Bar X ranch. The trail wound through scrubby hills, the sun beating down like a hammer on an anvil. Jack's mind wandered to his past, growing up in a sod house in Kansas, losing his parents to cholera, learning to rope and ride from an old vaquero who took pity on him. He'd been on the move ever since, from the gold fields of Colorado to the cattle trails of Oklahoma. Red Rock felt like just another stop, but something in the air, the scent of sage and distant rain, hinted at more. Arriving at the Bar X as the sun hung low, Jack found Eli Thorne inspecting a corral of longhorns. Thorne was a grizzled old-timer, his beard like steel wool, his limp a souvenir from a Comanche arrow in '68. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, sized Jack up immediately. "You the one lookin' for work?" Thorne growled, spitting a stream of tobacco juice into the dust. Jack nodded. "Jack Harlan, good with horses, better with cattle, need a hand for the drive. Thorne scratched his chin. We got 3,000 head into Abilene in 2 weeks, pays 30 a month and found, but it's hard-ridden, dust, heat, and rustlers dogging us every step. You up for it? I've faced worse, Jack replied, his voice steady. Thorne extended a gnarled hand. You're hired, bunkhouse is yonder, supper at 6. The ranch was a bustling hive. Cowboys mending saddles, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the lowing of cattle in the pens. Jack settled Rusty in the stable, rubbing him down with a curry comb, the horse nickering softly in appreciation. In the bunkhouse, he met the crew old Pete, a veteran of the Mexican War with stories taller than a mesquite tree, Tommy, a freckle-faced kid barely 18, full of wide-eyed enthusiasm, and a half-dozen others hardened by the frontier. That night, over beans and cornbread around the campfire, the men swapped tailies. Pete lit his pipe, the smoke curling upward. Back in '49, I crossed the Rio Grande with Taylor's army, fought banditos tougher than any rustler. Tommy leaned in. You ever see a Comanche, Pete? Pete's eyes darkened. Seen 'em all right, ghosts on horseback, but Thorne's got treaties now mostly. Jack listened quietly, his thoughts drifting back to Clara. Why had her glance lingered? He shook it off. Work came first. The next days blurred into routine. Dawn patrols to check fences, branding calves with the hot iron searing flesh, the acrid smell hanging in the air. Jack proved his worth, roping a maverick steer that broke from the herd, his lariat whistling through the air. Thorne nodded approval. You'll do, Harlan. One afternoon, as Jack watered Rusty at the creek, a rider approached. Clara, her skirt hitched up for riding, her horse a spirited pinto named Blaze. Mr. Harlan, she called, dismounting gracefully. Miss Beaumont, fancy seein' you out here. She smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. Heard you joined the Bar X, thought I'd bring word from town, sheriff's lookin' for hands to deputize against rustlers. Jack raised an eyebrow. And you rode all this way to tell me? Her cheeks flushed slightly. Maybe I wanted the fresh air. Town gets stuffy. They walked along the creek, the water babbling over rocks. Clara spoke of her life, growing up in New Orleans, her father dragging her west after her mother's death, teaching her cards and self-defense. Pa said a woman needs wits more than beauty in this country. Jack shared snippets of his own story. Lost my family young, been ridden ever since, never found a place to hang my hat. She touched his arm lightly. Maybe Red Rock's that place. The moment hung between them, charged like the air before a storm. But duty called. Jack returned to work, Clara riding back to town. That spark grew, but Jack buried it under layers of caution. Subplots began to weave. Sarah Thorne, Eli's daughter, a quiet beauty with auburn hair and a talent for herbal remedies, took notice of Jack. She brought him coffee in the mornings, her smiles shy. Pa says you're the best hand he's hired in years. Jack was polite but distant, his mind on Clara. Meanwhile, whispers of rustlers grew louder. Scouts found tracks, shod horses circling the outer pastures. One night Jack volunteered for watch. The stars wheeled overhead, the herd restless under the moon. A shot cracked the silence, cattle stamping. Jack spurred Rusty, firing into the shadows. He winged one rustler, but they escaped with 20 head. Thorne was furious at dawn. Damn 'em, that's the 3rd time this month. Jack examined the tracks. They're heading south toward the border, organized outfit. Thorne clapped him on the shoulder. You're laden, the posse tomorrow, get 'em back. The posse rode out, Jack, Pete, Tommy, and 4 others. The trail led through canyons, the sun baking the earth. They found the rustlers' camp at dusk, a fire flickering. Sneaking in, they overpowered the guards, recovering the cattle after a brief gunfight. Returning triumphant, Jack earned respect. But in town, celebrating at the Double Eagle, trouble brewed. Black Bart Slade, a slick gambler with a scar from ear to chin, eyed Jack from the poker table. Heard you played hero, Harlan, Slade sneered. But I know your kind, thief in sheep's clothing. Jack's past resurfaced, a false accusation from Dodge, where Slade had framed him for rustling to cover his own tracks. That's old news, Slade, cleared my name. Slade laughed. Not to me, watch your back. Clara intervened, banning Slade for the night. Later, alone with Jack, she poured whiskey. What's his beef with you? Jack confessed the story. We crossed in Kansas. He's the real rustler. She nodded. Men like him poison towns. Stay clear. Their talks deepened. Clara revealed dreams of expanding the saloon, maybe adding a hotel. Jack spoke of settling down, raising his own herd. Not love yet, but companionship in a lonely land. The drive loomed. Preparations intensified. Wagons loaded with supplies, horses shod, guns oiled. The herd was gathered, longhorns with horns like scimitars. They set out at first light, the air filled with dust and whoops. Jack rode drag, eating trail dust, rusty nimble among the stragglers. The landscape shifted, prairies to badlands, crossing the Colorado River, waters swirling. Nights were stories and songs. Pete sang the streets of Laredo, his voice cracking with age. Tommy dreamed of California gold. But rustlers shadowed them. Scouts spotted campfires. One night, attack came, gunfire, chaos. Jack rallied the men, driving off the raiders, but Tommy was shot in the leg. Hang on, kid, Jack urged, bandaging the wound. They pressed on, reaching Abilene. The sale was profitable, bonuses paid. Jack wired money home, none, as he had no home. Back in Red Rock, Clara waited. Their reunion was tender, a walk under stars, hands brushing. Missed you, she admitted. Me too. Subplots twisted. Sarah confessed her feelings to Jack, heartbroken when he gently refused. My heart's elsewhere. Comanche rumors proved true. Raiders hit outlying ranches. Thorne fortified, but one night they struck the Bar X. War cries, arrows, gunfire. Jack fought fiercely, protecting the house. Wounded, he held the line until dawn. Clara rode through danger, nursing him. Fool man, getting hurt. Their bond solidified. Jack proposed, she accepted, but Slade returned, kidnapping Sarah for revenge. The climax, posse chase, showdown in canyons. Jack outdrew Slade, rescuing Sarah. Peace followed, wedding, family, prosperity. The frontier tamed, but spirits wild. As years passed, Jack and Clara reflected on porches, their story a legend of dust, destiny, love, and the Texas wild.